Okay, so right about now, I would say it's safe to say that trackers have made quite the comeback over the last couple of years, and rightfully so. Since I was already a big fan of the Polyend Tracker, I was really excited when they announced their new mini tracker, a more powerful, battery-powered, portable version of their original concept. What I really wanted to find out on the Mini was, did Polyend really succeed in translating the user experience into this portable system? And having had to make certain compromises in the name of portability, was it still as fast and was it still as fun? In this video, I hope to answer those questions as well as tell you what I think about the new mini tracker beyond the spec sheet from a real user's perspective. If you're already a subscriber, huge welcome back. If this is your first time here, hi, welcome to the Midlight Synthesis. Let's get started. Now, for full transparency's sake, Polyend did send me the mini tracker free of charge, but they are not paying me for this video and they do not have any say in its contents, nor do they get to see it before you do. So, first things first. What did we lose from the original to make this smaller form factor possible, and how does it affect the workflow? Perhaps the most obvious omission in the Mini is the lack of the white silicon button grid. This grid is used in the original mainly for note selection and value input. I personally was never a big fan of it because the buttons don't have any travel to speak of. They're kind of static and they don't have any click. For note selection on the Mini, you can quickly change the notes using the plus and minus buttons, where you can travel in half steps if you use the little plus and minus, and full octaves if you use the big plus and minus. Furthermore, if you long press the note button, a note grid will appear on the screen for you to select the note more deliberately if you so choose. As far as workflow goes, though having an integrated keybed is certainly useful, I really haven't missed it that much, since I would usually plug in an external controller into the original anyway. Also, thanks to the new MIDI integration with USB-C, you can use a variety of external controllers, including your smartphone. So I say, good riddance to the silicon button grid, you will not be missed. The other notable absentee is the jog wheel. Now, to be perfectly honest, I was actually pretty worried about this because it was such an integral part of the original's workflow. Though I do miss it more than the button grid, Polyend have really done a great job with the way that they replaced it. To navigate values on the Mini, you can now jump around with the plus and minus values, which allow you to do big jumps with the higher and lower buttons and smaller incremental jumps with the middle buttons. You can also navigate and modify values just as easily with the crosspad on the left of the device. As I said before on the Sequential Pro 3, having redundancy in the controls and synths and group boxes makes the workflow much faster by having multiple ways of accessing the same parameters. So the redundancy here is very much appreciated. The one place where I did really miss the jog wheel was in the performance mode. In the original, you could change the values of the parameters and effects in the performance mode with the jog wheel very fluidly. Now, this has been cleverly replaced with the combination of the plus-minus function and the crosspad, and still works, but the level of detail and speed of the jog wheel was pretty unique. That being said though, the new navigation on the Mini works great, and thankfully, performance mode is just as fun as it ever was. Aside from those two alterations, the screen is also smaller and it looks pretty damn great. Though there are some dedicated menu buttons missing here, you still have the color-coded note, instrument, and effects buttons for quick access to the main parameters, as well as 4 new assignable quick select buttons for navigating the Mini's multiple menus. At first, I thought I'd missed the dedicated buttons for the menus, but since the new 4 assignable buttons have a shift option, you actually have quick access to 8 menus. So in practice, it's very easy to fly around once you get used to it. Of course, you can't access all the menus by long pressing the menu button and selecting them there. Finally, you still have that same row of buttons below the screen that you had in the original. Frankly, I was worried that fewer buttons would mean a bunch of new button combos to memorize, but I am happy to report that Polyend kept them at a bare minimum here. Now with all that out of the way, let's talk about what's new here. One of the most notable additions to the Mini is the internal battery. Now let me tell you, the guys at Polyend were not playing around. Up until now, my benchmark for a long battery life in portable music devices has been the original OP1. I could honestly just charge that thing once every couple of months and it would just keep working. It was that good. Here, the battery life is turning out to be just as impressive. Though the official information on the Mini is that the battery lasts up to 8 hours, a full charge lasted me a couple of weeks, using it in 15 to half an hour sessions, as one does with these portable devices. I don't know if it's because the screen or maybe the CPU aren't that power hungry, or maybe that the battery's huge, but it's definitely proving that it's not a gimmick. The other thing that I appreciate is the permanent battery level meter on the top right corner, so you know exactly how much gas you have left in the tank. As for the hardware itself, the clicky laptop keyboard style navigation buttons of the original have been replaced by much softer controls. To my relief, all the buttons have travel, but they don't have that satisfying click that some old heads like me just love. That being said though, the buttons feel nice to play around with and are very responsive. Also, the larger and thicker form factor compared to something like the M8 is much more comfortable on my hands and joints, especially in longer sessions. Okay, so aside from the battery, another huge addition here, and perhaps one of the things that had me most excited about the Mini, is the onboard internal microphone. Let me preface this by admitting that I am very much biased here. I personally think that every portable battery-powered groove box out there should have an internal microphone, by law. The SB404 used to have one, and it was so much fun. I don't know why they took it out of the Mark II. The Deluge and the OP1 both have one, and they allow for some of the funnest, most weirdest sound explorations you can have on a portable device. To me, it just makes sense that if you have a portable sample-based machine, you should have the ability to collect samples on the go, especially if you don't have a varied roster of onboard synthesizer engines to rely on. The thing is easy to use, it has a decent sound quality to it, and it works great as a source of material for mangling as well as for feeding the granular and wavetable synths on the tracker. Since the Mini doesn't have any other synthesizers on it, at least now at the time of recording, the ability to record samples directly just adds so much more dimension to it, especially when you're playing around outside and away from a computer. Aside from that, the workflow and interface are pretty much the same as on the original tracker. Though this version is more powerful with longer sampling times and stereo samples. The USB also plays a much larger role here, as the Mini allows for audio over USB, and as I said before, you can also use your smartphone as a keyboard controller through the USB in a pinch or on the go. So, all things considered, what do I think about the Mini? First of all, I think it's impossible not to talk about the Mini Tracker without at least mentioning the M8 sized elephant in the room. Now, to be perfectly clear here, I adore the M8, and I think that it set a very high benchmark of what a portable music making machine can be. Though both the Mini and the original Polyend Tracker use the same concepts as the M8, they are in essence very different machines, and I do believe that they will appeal to a very different demographic. I think that the biggest pros of the M8 are the synthesizer engines and the effects. The sheer depth of options in sound design, as well as the amazing quality of the sounds they produce, is staggering. And where it does suffer is that both the screen and the body are very tiny, and that can get very fatiguing both on the eyes and on your hands, especially after long sessions. Also, the sheer number of button combos and lack of dedicated buttons means that you really have to thoroughly learn this thing to be able to use it properly, or at least keep a nice little cheat sheet nearby. For someone who's looking for a portable tracker that doesn't rely too much on samples and wants more of a synthesizer-based tracker experience, the M8 will probably be a great choice. The Mini Tracker, on the other hand, is in my opinion a huge step up from the original and should be a perfect choice for people who love grabbing samples on the go and then use them in a tracker workflow. Those of you looking for a fun experience without the over-reliance on button combos will also find a friendlier device in the Mini than on the M8 probably. And older people like me, or should I say vintage musicians like me, will probably appreciate the bigger screen and the thicker build of the Tracker Mini. After using the Mini for about a month now, I do have to say that I see this as a huge win for Polyend. Just as a side note, the media embargo for the Mini was actually lifted about 2 weeks ago, but I held off on this review because my first draft of this video was all praises and I thought it might be just the honeymoon syndrome talking. I don't know, I might still be affected a touch by the novelty, but so far the Mini has always felt welcoming and fresh, like a game I always want to get back to playing. The form factor is just great for portable music making, and the battery hasn't left me down once. Except now, of course. The workflow on the original was already amazing, and it lives on here, perfectly preserved and improved with the addition of the internal microphone and more horsepower. With Polyend's history of continued firmware upgrades, I can only speculate on what new things will be coming on this new platform, but they're definitely off to a great start. As always, thank you so much for watching, and thank you to Polyend for sending me the Mini for review. I hope you found this video useful, or at least entertaining. Have a great week. See you next time.